The War Council of the Zephyrian Empire gathered in the crystalline halls of their homeworld, their serpentine forms coiled around floating platforms that hummed with anti-grav technology. High Commander Vexthar's scales rippled with the deep purple that indicated supreme confidence as he addressed the assembled military leaders. Fellow warriors, his voice resonated through the chamber with harmonic undertones that made the crystal walls sing. Today we discuss the newest species to enter our galaxy's political sphere. The humans. A holographic display materialized in the center of the room, showing a small blue-green planet orbiting a yellow star. The image rotated slowly, revealing continents and oceans that seemed almost primitive compared to the vast metal worlds the Zephyrians called home. This species calls their world Earth, Vexthar continued, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. They have recently developed faster-than-light travel and have begun establishing colonies in nearby systems. Our scouts report they possess basic energy weapons and crude spacecraft. Sub-Commander Crothall, whose younger scales still showed the bright green of ambition, raised his head from his coiled position. High Commander, why do we concern ourselves with such primitive beings? Surely they pose no threat to our empire? Vexthar's eyes, black orbs that reflected light like polished obsidian, focused on the younger officer. Because, Sub-Commander, they have something we require. Their planet sits at the intersection of three major hyperspace routes. Control of Earth means control of trade through this entire sector. The hologram shifted to show star charts, with glowing lines representing hyperspace corridors converging on Earth's system like the spokes of a wheel. The strategic importance was immediately clear to everyone present. Furthermore, Vexthar's scales darkened to a more ominous shade. Our preliminary assessment suggests these humans are weak. They fight among themselves constantly, their technology is centuries behind ours, and they show no signs of the unity that makes a species truly dangerous. Admiral SS Svara, the oldest member of the council whose scales had taken on the silver hue of age and wisdom, shifted slightly. High Commander, what of the Galactic Council's protocols regarding first contact with emerging species? The humans have not yet been formally evaluated. Vexthar's laugh was a sound like grinding metal. The Galactic Council grows soft, Admiral. While they debate and discuss, opportunities slip away. By the time they decide how to approach the humans, we will have already secured their compliance. The humans will become our vassals, their world our staging ground for further expansion. The High Commander activated another holographic display, this one showing detailed schematics of human technology. Spacecraft that looked crude and angular compared to the flowing, organic designs of Zephyrian vessels. Weapons that relied on chemical propulsion rather than plasma or quantum energy. Look at this, Vexthar gestured with one clawed appendage. They still use metal projectiles in their small arms. Their largest warships barely qualify as corvettes by our standards. A single Zephyrian battlecruiser could destroy their entire combined fleet. Sub-Commander Crothall studied the displays with growing excitement. How do you propose we proceed, High Commander? Do we demand their surrender immediately? Patience, Vexthar's tone took on the quality of a teacher instructing a particularly slow student. We will follow the traditional approach. First, we make contact through diplomatic channels. We offer them the honor of joining our empire as a protectorate. When they refuse, as all species initially do, we demonstrate our superiority through limited military action. The High Commander manipulated the hologram to show Earth's orbital infrastructure. Space stations that look like collections of metal boxes connected by tubes. Satellites that appeared to be nothing more than radio transmitters and primitive sensors. We target their orbital installations first. Nothing that would cause significant loss of life, of course. We are not barbarians. But enough to show them the futility of resistance. Most species surrender after such a demonstration. Admiral SSS Vara's old eyes narrowed slightly. And if they do not surrender, High Commander? Then, we escalate gradually. Disable their ground-based spaceports. Destroy any ships that launch against us. Eventually, they will realize that cooperation is their only option for survival. Vexthar's scales rippled with satisfaction. Our intelligence suggests human psychology responds well to overwhelming displays of power. They respect strength. The Council spent the next several hours reviewing detailed plans. The Zephyrian fleet would approach Earth's system openly, broadcasting messages of peaceful intent while simultaneously demonstrating their technological superiority. A show of force designed to intimidate without immediately threatening. Our behavioral analysts have studied human communication patterns, reported Intelligence Chief Mordin, whose specialized implants allowed him to interface directly with the Empire's vast databases. They appear to be highly emotional and prone to fear-based decision-making. The sight of our fleet should be sufficient to convince their leaders of the wisdom of cooperation. Vexthar nodded approvingly. Excellent. How long will it take to assemble the necessary forces? The 3rd Battle Fleet is currently on patrol near the Rigel sector. Admiral SS Esbara consulted her tactical displays. They could be redirected to Earth within 2 standard cycles. 15 ships should be more than adequate for the initial contact. Make it 20, Vexthar decided. I want to ensure the impression is memorable. As the council session continued, none of the Zephyrians noticed the small human probe that had been drifting silently at the edge of their system for the past 3 months. Disguised as space debris and running on minimal power, the probe had been recording everything with sensors far more sophisticated than the Zephyrians' intelligence reports suggested. The probe's AI noted the gathering, analyzed the audio patterns it could detect through electromagnetic leakage from the Zephyrian shields, and began transmitting a tight beam message toward Earth. The transmission would take 6 weeks to reach its destination, but it carried detailed information about Zephyrian technology, ship configurations, and, most importantly, their intentions. Meanwhile, in Earth's solar system, humanity was far from the primitive species the Zephyrians believed them to be. The public face of human civilization, the one visible to casual observation, painted a picture of a young species still struggling with internal conflicts and limited technology. But beneath that surface lay something the Zephyrians had failed to detect. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Luna Station, humanity's primary military coordination facility hidden within the moon's crust. The facility stretched for kilometers through natural lava tubes that had been expanded and reinforced with materials that existed in a constant state of quantum flux, making them effectively invisible to most scanning technologies. Admiral Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez approached with a datapad, his expression grim. We've received the transmission from Probe 7. You need to see this. Chen studied the decoded information, her expression growing more serious with each line of text. The probe's AI had done excellent work, not only recording the Zephyrian Council session but analyzing their technology and creating preliminary tactical assessments. 20 ships, she murmured, then looked up at Rodriguez. They think 20 ships will be enough to intimidate us into surrender. Should I alert the Security Council, Admiral? Chen was quiet for a long moment, considering their options. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades, ever since the discovery of faster-than-light travel had made contact with alien civilizations inevitable. But she had hoped their first encounter would be with a species interested in peaceful coexistence. Yes, alert the Council. But also send a priority message to Fleet Command. I want the Ghost Squadron mobilized and ready for deployment within 48 hours. Rodriguez nodded and moved to carry out his orders, but Chen called him back. And, Lieutenant Commander? Make sure the message is coded with Omega-7 encryption. If these Zephyrians are as advanced as they appear, they might be monitoring our communications. As Rodriguez left to execute his orders, Chen turned back to the tactical display showing Earth and its surrounding space. To an outside observer, the system appeared lightly defended. A few orbital platforms, some patrol ships, the usual infrastructure of an emerging spacefaring civilization. But Admiral Chen knew better. Hidden throughout the solar system were weapon platforms that existed in folded space, accessible only through carefully tuned quantum keys. Entire fleets of ships waited in parallel dimensions, ready to slip back into normal space at a moment's notice. And, beneath the surface of Earth itself lay the culmination of humanity's greatest scientific achievement. The Zephyrians were about to learn that humans had a talent for misdirection that went far beyond simple camouflage. They were masters of making their enemies underestimate them, and they had turned that talent into the foundation of their entire defense strategy. Chen activated her secure communication array and began composing a message to the Global Defense Council. The message was brief but comprehensive, outlining the threat and requesting authorization for the full defensive protocol. Within 6 hours, she had her answer. The response came not just from the Defense Council, but from the Office of the Secretary General of the United Earth Government himself. 3 words that carried the weight of humanity's determination to remain free: authorization granted. Proceed. As Chen began implementing the protocols that would prepare Earth for its first interstellar war, she couldn't help but think about the irony of the situation. The Zephyrians believed they were dealing with a primitive species, one that could be easily intimidated into submission. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. Human history was filled with examples of seemingly weaker forces defeating more powerful enemies through superior strategy, technology, and sheer determination. From David and Goliath to the guerrilla campaigns that had shaped Earth's political landscape, humanity had learned that size and apparent strength were not always decisive factors in conflict. The Zephyrians, with their overwhelming confidence and their assumption that superior technology guaranteed victory, were about to receive an education in human warfare that they would never forget. The war was coming, whether humanity wanted it or not. But, unlike the Zephyrians, humans had learned long ago that the best way to survive a fight was to make sure you were the one who chose when and how it began. Admiral Chen smiled grimly as she watched the first phase of humanity's defensive preparations begin to unfold. The Zephyrians thought they were the hunters in this scenario. They were about to discover they were actually the prey. 3 weeks after the Zephyrian War Council, the Third Battle Fleet began its journey toward Earth. 20 massive vessels slipped through hyperspace, their organic curves and crystalline structures reflecting the alien beauty of their creators. Each ship stretched over 2 kilometers in length, bristling with energy weapons and protected by shields that could deflect most known forms of attack. High Commander Vexthar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Serpent's Revenge, watching the swirling patterns of hyperspace flow past the viewports. His scales had taken on the deep purple of confident anticipation, and his officers moved about their duties with the efficient precision of a military force that had never known defeat. Navigation reports we will arrive at the human system in 6 standard hours, announced his tactical officer, Subcommander Crothall. All ships are maintaining perfect formation and all systems are operating at optimal efficiency. Vexthar nodded his serpentine head in satisfaction. The journey had proceeded exactly as planned, with no complications or delays. Soon, the humans would see the might of the Zephyrian Empire and understand their place in the galaxy's hierarchy. Have our xenobiologists finished their analysis of human psychology? Vexthar inquired, turning to face his intelligence officer. Yes, High Commander, Mordin replied, his implants glowing softly as he accessed the relevant data. Humans appear to be pack hunters who developed from predatory mammals. They show strong tribal loyalties but also engage in frequent internecine conflict. Most importantly, they respond to displays of superior force by submitting to stronger pack leaders. The High Commander's laugh was like the sound of crystals chiming in harmony. Perfect. They should recognize our superiority immediately and accept our guidance without significant resistance. As the Zephyrian fleet continued its approach, they remained unaware that their every move was being monitored by human observation posts scattered throughout known space. Humanity's intelligence network was far more extensive than anyone suspected, built on the principle that information was the most valuable weapon in any conflict. On Earth, the Global Defense Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from every major nation sat around a circular table in a chamber buried 3 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps. The room's walls displayed real-time tactical information fed by quantum communication arrays that operated faster than light itself. Secretary General Maria Santos called the session to order with a grim expression. Ladies and gentlemen, our long-range sensors have confirmed what the probe data suggested. 20 Zephyrian warships are approaching our system. They will arrive within 6 hours. Defense Minister Zhang Wei leaned forward, studying the tactical displays. Admiral Chen, what is our assessment of their capabilities? Admiral Chen activated a holographic projector, filling the center of the table with detailed schematics of Zephyrian vessels. Each ship is roughly equivalent to a heavy battlecruiser by our classifications. They use plasma-based energy weapons, quantum shielding, and appear to have faster-than-light communication capabilities. Can our defenses handle them? Asked President Catherine Morrison, representing the North American Federation. Chen's smile was cold and professional. That depends on whether we want to reveal our true capabilities or maintain our cover as a primitive species. Santos considered the implications. Humanity had spent decades building a careful facade, appearing to be exactly what most alien observers expected, a young species struggling with basic spaceflight and prone to internal conflicts. The deception had allowed them to avoid unwanted attention while secretly developing technologies that surpassed most spacefaring civilizations. What are our options, Admiral? We have 3 primary courses of action, Chen explained, manipulating the holographic display to show different scenarios. First, we can attempt diplomatic resolution, revealing nothing about our true capabilities but trying to negotiate a peaceful outcome. The display shifted to show probability matrices and outcome projections. Unfortunately, based on the Zephyrian Council recording, they have no interest in genuine diplomacy. They intend to make us a vassal state regardless of our response. Second option? Santos prompted. We can reveal our defensive capabilities gradually, escalating our response to match their aggression. This might convince them to withdraw without a full-scale conflict, but it risks a prolonged war if they decide to call for reinforcements. Minister Zhang studied the projections carefully. And the third option? Admiral Chen's expression became deadly serious. We end the threat decisively. Full deployment of our advanced systems, complete destruction of their fleet, and a clear message that humanity is not to be underestimated. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had always hoped their first contact with alien life would be peaceful, but the Zephyrians had made that impossible through their own arrogance and aggressive intentions. President Morrison was the first to speak. Admiral, if we choose the third option, what are the risks of retaliation from the broader Zephyrian Empire? Minimal, in my assessment, Chen replied. Our intelligence suggests the Zephyrians are an aggressive species, but they also respect strength. A decisive defeat of this fleet would likely convince them that humans are too dangerous to attack directly. Santos polled the council members, and the vote was unanimous. Humanity would defend itself with overwhelming force, sending a clear message that Earth was not a target for casual conquest. Admiral Chen, you have full authorization to implement Protocol 7, Santos announced formally. May God help us all. As the council session ended, Chen activated her emergency command protocols. Across the solar system, hidden installations began powering up systems that had never been used in actual combat. Weapon platforms that existed in folded space started preparing to shift into normal reality. Ships that appeared to be simple transport vessels shed their disguise fields to reveal advanced warship configurations. The centerpiece of humanity's hidden defenses was the Titan Array, a network of quantum manipulation devices buried throughout the Earth's crust. Originally designed for planetary engineering projects, the array had been secretly modified to serve as the ultimate defensive weapon. It could manipulate matter and energy on a scale that made traditional weapons obsolete. But Chen hoped it wouldn't come to that. Even with all of humanity's technological advantages, war was unpredictable, and innocent lives were always at stake. Meanwhile, the Zephyrian fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system with theatrical precision. The 20 ships arranged themselves in a perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of Sol as they began broadcasting a message toward the inner planets. People of Earth, High Commander Vexthar's translated words echoed across every communication frequency, we are the Zephyrian Empire, masters of this galactic sector. We come offering you the privilege of joining our civilization as a protectorate species. The message continued with what the Zephyrians considered generous terms. Humanity would be allowed to maintain limited self-governance under Zephyrian oversight. Human colonies would be permitted to expand, but only under Imperial approval. Most importantly, Earth would serve as a waystation for Zephyrian fleets traversing the local hyperspace routes. You have 24 of your planetary rotations to respond, the message concluded. We trust you will make the wise choice. In the hidden command center on Luna, Admiral Chen watched the alien formation with professional interest. The Zephyrian ships were impressive, she had to admit. Their energy signatures indicated technology several centuries in advance of what humanity publicly displayed. But Chen had access to information the Zephyrians lacked. Humanity's greatest secret wasn't just their hidden weapons or disguised capabilities. It was the fact that humans had been studying alien technology for far longer than anyone realized. 70 years ago, a damaged alien probe had crashed in the Pacific Ocean. The technology inside that probe had jump-started human development in directions no one could have predicted. By reverse engineering alien quantum mechanics, gravitational manipulation, and energy conversion systems, humanity had leapfrogged centuries of normal technological development. The Zephyrians thought they were dealing with a species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel. They had no idea they were facing a civilization that had already surpassed them in most technological areas. Chen activated her command interface and began issuing orders. All stations, initiate Defensive Protocol 7. Ghost Squadron, begin Phase 1 deployment. Titan Array, prepare for potential activation. Across human space, invisible preparations continued. The Zephyrians maintained their formation, confident in their overwhelming superiority and waiting for humanity's inevitable surrender. They had no way of knowing that every second they remained in the Sol system, human sensors were analyzing their technology, mapping their shield frequencies, and identifying structural vulnerabilities in their ship designs. The trap was being set, and the Zephyrians were walking into it with the absolute confidence of predators who had never encountered prey that could fight back. Admiral Chen checked her chronometer. 22 hours remaining until the Zephyrian deadline. More than enough time to complete preparations for what would either be the shortest war in human history, or the beginning of humanity's emergence as a major galactic power. Either way, the Zephyrians were about to learn that appearances could be very, very deceiving. 23 hours after their arrival, the Zephyrian fleet received Earth's response. It came not as a formal surrender, but as a simple message broadcast on standard diplomatic frequencies from what appeared to be a primitive orbital platform around Earth. To the Zephyrian Empire, the message began in accented but understandable galactic standard, delivered by a human female in what looked like a basic military uniform. This is Admiral Sarah Chen, speaking for the United Earth Government. We acknowledge receipt of your generous offer. High Commander Vexthar listened with growing satisfaction as the message continued. The human's posture and tone suggested the kind of nervous submission he had expected from a primitive species facing overwhelming force. However, Admiral Chen continued, humanity must respectfully decline your proposal. Earth and all human colonies will remain independent and sovereign. We request that your fleet withdraw from our system immediately. The message ended abruptly, leaving the Zephyrian bridge in stunned silence. Subcommander Crothall was the first to speak, his scales flickering with the yellow of confused disbelief. High Commander, surely this is some sort of misunderstanding? They cannot possibly believe they can resist us. Vexthar's scales darkened to the deep red of anger, but his voice remained controlled. It appears these humans require a demonstration of reality. Very well. We shall provide one. He turned to his tactical officer. Target their orbital installations. Disable them without destroying them completely. Let us show them the futility of resistance. The Zephyrian fleet began moving toward Earth's inner system, their weapons charging with the distinctive line of plasma conduits reaching full power. On their displays, Earth's defenses looked pathetically inadequate, a handful of orbital stations, some primitive satellites, and what appeared to be a few patrol ships that barely qualified as armed spacecraft. What the Zephyrians couldn't see were the preparations taking place throughout the solar system. Hidden in the asteroid belt, weapon platforms that had been disguised as mining operations were powering up systems that bent the laws of physics in ways most species considered impossible. Near Jupiter, a massive facility that appeared to be a gas harvesting station was actually humanity's primary fleet base, where ships that existed in folded space were preparing to enter normal reality. Most significantly, deep within Earth's crust, the Titan array was reaching full operational status. The quantum manipulation network could reshape matter and energy on a planetary scale, but Admiral Chen hoped it wouldn't be necessary to reveal that particular capability. Ghost Squadron, report status, Chen commanded from her hidden lunar base. Ghost Leader here, came the reply from Commander David Park, leader of humanity's most advanced tactical unit. All 12 ships are cloaked and in position, awaiting orders to engage. Chen studied her tactical displays, watching as the Zephyrian fleet approached Earth with casual confidence. They were maintaining a loose formation, clearly not expecting any significant resistance. Their shields were active but not at maximum power, and their weapon systems were charging slowly, as if this was merely a training exercise. Stand by, Ghost Leader. Let them make the first move. The Zephyrian flagship, Serpent's Revenge, moved to within weapons range of Earth's largest orbital platform. The station appeared to be a standard communications and docking facility, exactly the kind of infrastructure a primitive spacefaring civilization would build. Fire a warning shot, Vexthar ordered. Disabled their primary communication array. That should convince them we mean business. A brilliant beam of plasma energy lanced out from the Zephyrian vessel, striking the orbital platform with surgical precision. The outer communication dish exploded in a shower of sparks and debris, and the station's lights flickered as power systems overloaded. From the Zephyrian perspective, it was a perfect demonstration of superior technology. One shot had crippled the human's primary space installation without causing significant loss of life. now surely they would see reason and surrender. They were completely unprepared for what happened next. The damaged orbital platform suddenly blazed with energy signatures that registered far beyond anything the Zephyrians had detected before. What had appeared to be a simple communications array revealed itself as a sophisticated quantum resonance emitter, capable of disrupting matter on a subatomic level. Before the Zephyrians could react, space around their fleet began to shimmer and distort. 12 ships materialized out of nowhere, their sleek black hulls reflecting no light and their energy signatures completely unknown to Zephyrian science. What in the name of the Great Serpent? Sub-Commander Crothal's exclamation was cut short as the lead human ship opened fire. The weapon that struck Serpent's revenge was unlike anything in the Zephyrian arsenal. Instead of plasma or particle beams, it fired concentrated streams of quantum-destabilized particles that passed through normal shields as if they didn't exist. The beam struck the Zephyrian flagship's hull and began systematically dismantling its molecular structure. Shields! Vexthar roared, but his tactical officer could only stare at the displays in horror. High Commander, the shields are active, but these weapons are ignoring them completely. Hull integrity dropping to 60%. Around the flagship, the other Zephyrian vessels were coming under attack from human ships that seemed to appear and disappear at will. The black vessels used some form of advanced stealth technology that made them nearly invisible to sensors, allowing them to strike without warning and vanish before return fire could be targeted. But the most shocking revelation came when one of the human ships took a direct hit from a Zephyrian plasma cannon. Instead of being destroyed or damaged, the human vessel simply absorbed the energy and redirected it back at its attacker with twice the intensity. How is this possible? Vexthar demanded, watching his carefully planned demonstration of superiority turn into a nightmare of technological inadequacy. Our intelligence reports indicated these humans were primitives. Commander Park's voice crackled over the communication system, speaking in perfect galactic standard. Attention Zephyrian vessels. You have attacked a sovereign species without provocation. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Vexthar's pride would not allow retreat, not when his entire worldview was being challenged. All ships, focus fire on the lead human vessel. Show them our true power. What followed could hardly be called a battle. It was more like a demonstration of the difference between a civilization that had developed naturally over millennia and one that had access to technology beyond its normal evolutionary path. The Zephyrian ships, for all their impressive appearance and advanced systems, were still bound by conventional understanding of physics and warfare. Their weapons were powerful but predictable, their defenses strong but limited by traditional energy interactions. The human vessels, by contrast, operated on principles that defied Zephyrian comprehension. They could phase in and out of normal space, manipulate matter at the quantum level, and harness forms of energy that existed in parallel dimensions. It was as if the humans had somehow skipped several million years of normal technological development. Within 30 minutes, half the Zephyrian fleet was disabled or destroyed. The remaining ships found their weapons useless against human technology and their defenses inadequate against human firepower. Serpent's Revenge hung dead in space, its hull breached in dozens of places and its command systems offline. High Commander Vexthar found himself trapped on a bridge filled with smoke and the acrid smell of burning electronics. High Commander, Sub-Commander Crothall reported weekly, green blood seeping from wounds caused by exploding console fragments, were receiving a transmission from the humans. Admiral Chen's image appeared on the main viewer, her expression calm and professional. Behind her, the flags of dozens of Earth nations hung in silent testament to humanity's unity in the face of external threat. High Commander Vexthar, she began, your fleet has been disabled. Your ships are damaged but not destroyed, and your crews are alive. This was intentional. We could have eliminated your entire force in the first 60 seconds of engagement. Vexthar stared at the human admiral, his mind reeling from the implications of what he was hearing. The humans had been toying with him, demonstrating their superiority while showing mercy that the Zephyrians would never have shown to a defeated enemy. You will repair your ships using materials we will provide, Chen continued. You will then return to your empire and deliver a message. Earth and all human colonies are under the protection of technological capabilities you cannot comprehend or counter. Any further aggression against humanity will result in retaliation that will make today's demonstration look gentle by comparison. The transmission ended, leaving the Zephyrian survivors to contemplate their complete and utter defeat at the hands of a species they had dismissed as primitive. Around them, human ships moved with casual efficiency, beginning the process of providing aid to the very fleet that had come to conquer them. It was an act of mercy that spoke to fundamental differences in how the two species approached conflict and victory. The Zephyrians fought to dominate and control. Humans fought to defend and protect, but, when they did fight, they fought to win so decisively that further conflict became impossible. High Commander Vexthar slumped in his command chair, his scales fading to the gray of defeat and humiliation. In a single day, everything he had believed about the galaxy's power structure had been shattered. The humans weren't the primitives his intelligence reports had described. They were something far more dangerous, an apparently primitive species that was actually more advanced than anyone suspected. And, now they knew that the Zephyrian Empire was not the unstoppable force it claimed to be. 6 weeks after the disastrous first contact with humanity, the remnants of the Third Battle Fleet limped back into Zephyrian space. Of the 20 proud warships that had departed for Earth, only 12 remained functional. The others had been so severely damaged that they required constant life support from their surviving sister ships just to keep their crews alive during the long journey home. High Commander Vexthar stood in the medical bay of his flagship, watching Zephyrian physicians tend to wounded crew members with techniques that seemed primitive compared to the medical technology the humans had casually demonstrated. When the human ships had provided humanitarian aid to the defeated fleet, their medical drones had healed injuries in minutes that would take Zephyrian medicine weeks to treat. High Commander, Sub-Commander Crothall approached, his scales still bearing the pale patches where human medical technology had regrown damaged tissue. "We are receiving transmission from High Command. Admiral SS Svara requests immediate debriefing upon our arrival." Vexthar nodded slowly, his scales the dull gray of deep humiliation. In the weeks since their defeat, he had tried repeatedly to understand how everything had gone so wrong. The humans had demonstrated technological capabilities that should have been impossible for a species so young, yet the evidence was undeniable. The journey home had given him time to review every sensor reading, every tactical analysis, every fragment of data they had collected about human technology. The conclusions were deeply disturbing. The humans weren't just more advanced than Zephyrian intelligence had suggested. They were more advanced than any species the Zephyrians had ever encountered. Their weapons operated on principles that Zephyrian science couldn't explain. Their ships moved through space using methods that violated known laws of physics. Most troubling of all, they had demonstrated these capabilities while clearly holding back their full potential. "Sir," Navigation Officer Vexthan reported from the bridge, "we are approaching the Zephyrian homeworld. High Command is directing us to dock at Military Station 7 for immediate debriefing and analysis." As the battered fleet approached their home system, Vexthar felt the weight of impending judgment. In Zephyrian culture, military failure was more than just a professional setback. It was a fundamental challenge to the natural order of dominance and submission that governed their society. A commander who failed so completely would face consequences that went far beyond simple demotion. But, even worse than personal disgrace was the knowledge that he would have to convince the Empire's leadership that humanity represented a threat beyond anything they had faced before. The proud Zephyrian military, which had conquered dozens of species over the past millennium, had been humiliated by creatures they had dismissed as primitive mammals. Military Station 7 orbited the Zephyrian homeworld like a metallic moon, its crystalline structures reflecting the golden light of their star in patterns that spoke of absolute order and control. As Serpent's Revenge approached the docking bay, Vexthar could see hundreds of military personnel waiting to greet them. Some were there out of professional curiosity about their defeat. Others came to witness the humiliation of a once proud commander. The docking process was completed in silence, broken only by the soft hum of artificial gravity adjusting to station parameters. As Vexthar prepared to disembark, he reviewed once more the data he would need to present to High Command. Everything depended on convincing them that this defeat was not the result of incompetence or cowardice, but of encountering a species that defied all previous assumptions about galactic civilization. Admiral SS Svara waited in the station's main conference chamber, her ancient scales reflecting centuries of military experience. Around her, the Empire's highest-ranking officers had assembled to hear the account of the Third Battle Fleet's first and only engagement with humanity. "High Commander Vexthar," her voice carried the weight of absolute authority, "you will provide a complete account of your encounter with the human species. Leave out no detail, however small it might seem." For the next 6 hours, Vexthar recounted everything that had happened from the moment they emerged from hyperspace near Earth to their eventual retreat under human escort. He described the apparent primitiveness of human infrastructure, the casual confidence with which his fleet had approached, and the shocking revelation of humanity's true capabilities. "You claim," Admiral Svara interrupted when he reached the description of human weapons, "that their energy beams pass through quantum shields as if they were not present?" "Yes, Admiral. Our shields registered at full power and optimal frequency, but the human weapons acted as if the shields did not exist. It was as though they were targeting us from a different dimensional plane entirely." The assembled officers exchanged glances heavy with implications. Dimensional warfare was theoretical technology that existed only in the most advanced scientific papers. If the humans had somehow developed practical applications for such concepts, it would explain their ability to ignore conventional defenses. "Continue," Admiral Svara commanded, though her scales had taken on the deep blue of profound concern. Vexthar described the human ships that appeared and disappeared at will, their ability to absorb Zephyrian weapons fire and redirect it with increased intensity, and, most disturbing of all, their apparent restraint throughout the engagement. "They could have destroyed us completely in the opening moments," he concluded. "Instead, they disabled our ships while minimizing casualties. When they provided medical aid afterward, their technology healed injuries in minutes that would require weeks using our methods. Admiral, we were not facing equals who happened to be more advanced. We were facing beings whose technology operates on principles we do not understand." Fleet Commander Morthak, a veteran of dozens of successful conquests, leaned forward with visible skepticism. "High Commander, you describe capabilities that border on fantasy. Are you certain this was not some elaborate illusion designed to make you retreat without engaging their real forces?" Vexthar had expected this challenge. He activated the holographic display and began showing the sensor readings his ships had recorded during the battle. The data was unambiguous: energy signatures that peaked beyond their instruments' ability to measure, gravitational distortions that suggested matter manipulation on an unprecedented scale, and weapon effects that defied conventional physics. "Fleet Commander," Vexthar said quietly, "I wish these were illusions. But our ships bear the physical evidence of their capabilities. More importantly, they sent a message for us to deliver." Admiral Svara's head tilted with interest. "A message?" Vexthar activated another recording, and Admiral Chen's image appeared in the conference chamber. Her words, delivered in perfect galactic standard, carried implications that made the assembled Zephyrian officers shift uncomfortably. "To the leadership of the Zephyrian Empire," Chen's recorded voice began, "your aggressive expansion ends now. Any further attacks on peaceful species will be met with direct intervention by humanity. You have seen a small demonstration of our defensive capabilities. Do not make the mistake of forcing us to show you our offensive potential." The recording continued with specific details about Zephyrian military installations, fleet positions, and strategic vulnerabilities. Information that should have been impossible for humans to obtain, yet was delivered with casual accuracy that proved they had intelligence networks throughout Zephyrian space. "They know everything about us," Vexthar said as the message ended. "Their intelligence capabilities are as advanced as their military technology. Admiral, we must face the reality that we have encountered a species that surpasses us in every meaningful category." The conference chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For over 1,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire had expanded through the galaxy by identifying weaker species and forcing them to submit. Their entire civilization was built on the principle that military might determine political dominance. But humanity had shattered that worldview in a single engagement. They had demonstrated technology that made Zephyrian superiority irrelevant, intelligence capabilities that penetrated Zephyrian security, and, most unsettling of all, a willingness to show mercy to defeated enemies. Admiral Svara was the first to break the silence. "If what you report is accurate, High Commander, then we face a choice that will determine the future of our empire. We can continue our expansion and risk total war with a species that outclasses us technologically, or we can adapt to a galaxy where we are no longer the dominant power." The debate that followed lasted for days. Conservative factions argued that the humans must be bluffing, that no species could develop such advanced technology so quickly. Progressive voices warned that underestimating humanity again could result in the complete destruction of Zephyrian civilization. In the end, it was the arrival of additional intelligence reports that settled the matter. Zephyrian spy networks throughout the galaxy began reporting similar encounters with mysterious human vessels. Ships that appeared without warning near conflicts between aggressive species and peaceful civilizations, always intervening on behalf of the victims. Humanity, it seemed, had appointed itself the galaxy's protector, and they had the technology to enforce that role. The final blow to Zephyrian confidence came when their scientists analyzed fragments of human technology recovered from the battlefield near Earth. The materials contained isotopes that shouldn't exist naturally, arranged in molecular structures that defied conventional chemistry. It was as if the humans had somehow learned to rewrite the fundamental laws of physics. Admiral SSS Vara called a final council meeting 3 weeks after Vexthar's return. The decision that emerged would reshape the Zephyrian Empire more fundamentally than any external conquest ever had. The age of expansion through force is over, she announced to the assembled leadership. Humanity has demonstrated that our military superiority is no longer absolute. We must learn to coexist with species we cannot dominate. The transformation wasn't immediate or easy. Zephyrian culture had to grapple with concepts that challenged everything they believed about power and dominance. But the alternative was extinction at the hands of a species that could make their entire fleet disappear without trace. High Commander Vexthar was reassigned to the newly created Department of Xenological Studies, tasked with understanding alien species through observation rather than conquest. His first assignment was to study humanity itself, trying to understand how a species could develop such advanced technology while maintaining the moral restraint to use it defensively. The more he learned about humans, the more he realized how catastrophically the Zephyrians had misjudged them. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their military capabilities. It was their ability to unite in the face of external threats while maintaining the ethical principles that prevented them from becoming the very thing they fought against. As news of the Zephyrian defeat spread through galactic civilization, other aggressive species began reconsidering their own expansion plans. If humanity could humble the mighty Zephyrian Empire with such ease, what might they do to smaller powers that threatened peaceful worlds? The answer came swiftly and decisively. Within months of the Earth incident, human ships began appearing throughout the galaxy wherever aggressive species threatened weaker civilizations. They never struck first, never conquered territory, and never demanded tribute or submission. But they made it clear that the age of easy conquest was over. Vexthar often wondered what would have happened if the Zephyrians had approached Earth with genuine diplomatic intentions rather than plans for conquest. Would humanity have shared their advanced technology? Would they have formed an alliance that could have benefited both species? Those questions would remain unanswered, but they served as a constant reminder of the consequences of assumptions and arrogance. The Zephyrian Empire had learned, at considerable cost, that in a galaxy full of unknown species, it was dangerous to assume that apparent weakness indicated actual vulnerability. The humans had taught them that lesson with a mercy they didn't deserve and a restraint that spoke to principles the Zephyrians were only beginning to understand. It was a lesson they would never forget. 2 years after the failed invasion of Earth, the galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The Zephyrian Empire, once the dominant military power in their sector, had evolved into something unprecedented, an aggressive civilization learning to coexist peacefully with its neighbors. High Commander Vexthar, now Director of Interspecies Relations for the reformed Zephyrian government, stood in the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel New Harmony as it approached Earth's solar system. This time, however, he came not as a conqueror but as a student, part of an official delegation seeking to understand how humanity had achieved technological advancement while maintaining ethical principles. The transformation of Zephyrian society hadn't been smooth or simple. Traditional power structures based on dominance and submission had to be dismantled and replaced with systems that emphasized cooperation and mutual benefit. Many Zephyrians struggled with concepts that seemed to contradict their fundamental nature, but the alternative was remaining isolated in a galaxy where humanity had become the unofficial peacekeepers. Director, his aide, former Sub-Commander Crothall, approached with a datapad containing the latest reports from across the galaxy. The intelligence summaries you requested. Vexthar reviewed the information with growing amazement. In the 2 years since humanity had revealed their true capabilities, they had intervened in 47 separate conflicts between aggressive and peaceful species. In every case, they had arrived precisely when needed, demonstrated overwhelming technological superiority, and then withdrawn once the threat was neutralized. Most remarkably, they had never claimed territory, demanded resources, or imposed their political system on others. They simply protected the innocent and left, like some mythological force of cosmic justice. Have our xenobiologists reached any conclusions about human psychology? Vexthar asked, studying a report about humanity's intervention in the Rigel sector, where they had prevented the militaristic Kraken Empire from enslaving a peaceful agricultural species. The preliminary findings are unusual, Crothall replied, his scales showing the yellow of confusion. Humans appear to have evolved cooperative instincts alongside their predatory ones. They can be incredibly violent when threatened, but they also show genuine empathy for suffering beings, even those they've never encountered before. It was a combination that Zephyrian psychology found difficult to understand. Most species developed either aggressive expansion drives or cooperative peaceful tendencies, but rarely both in such powerful balance. As their ship approached Earth, Vexthar reflected on the path that had brought him here. After the humiliating defeat of his fleet, he had expected execution or exile. Instead, Admiral Svara had assigned him to understand humanity, recognizing that his direct experience with their capabilities made him uniquely qualified for the task. What he had discovered challenged everything Zephyrians believed about power, civilization, and the natural order of galactic politics. Earth looked exactly as it had during his first approach, but now Vexthar knew better than to trust appearances. The orbital stations that seemed primitive were actually sophisticated quantum technology platforms. The patrol ships that looked outdated were equipped with weapons that could dismantle matter at the subatomic level. Even the planet itself was protected by defensive systems that operated on scales beyond Zephyrian comprehension. Incoming transmission, reported Communications Officer Taithran. Admiral Chen requests permission to board our vessel. Vexthar straightened his ceremonial robes, still getting used to diplomatic protocols rather than military commands. Permission granted. And, Taithran, remember that we are guests here. Show appropriate respect. Admiral Chen materialized on the bridge through what appeared to be simple transporter technology but, which Vexthar now knew was actually controlled quantum teleportation. She wore the same simple uniform he remembered from their previous encounters, but her presence seemed to carry the weight of humanity's hidden technological supremacy. Director Vexthar, she greeted him with professional courtesy, welcome back to our solar system. I trust your journey was comfortable? Indeed it was, Admiral. Thank you for agreeing to this cultural exchange. My government is eager to learn from humanity's example. Chen's expression remained neutral, but Vexthar detected subtle signs of cautious optimism. Your transformation has been noted throughout the galaxy. Other species are beginning to follow the Zephyrian example of choosing cooperation over conquest. As they traveled toward Earth, Chen provided a guided tour of humanity's public achievements. They visited Luna City, a sprawling metropolis built inside the moon that showcased human engineering capabilities. They observed the orbital manufacturing platforms that produced goods for dozens of peaceful species throughout the local sector. Most impressively, they toured the diplomatic academy where young humans trained to serve as mediators in interspecies conflicts. But Vexthar knew that what he was seeing represented only a fraction of humanity's true capabilities. The weapons and technologies that had defeated his fleet remained hidden, revealed only when peaceful species needed protection from aggressive expansion. May I ask, Vexthar inquired as they watched human students practice alien languages and cultural protocols, how your species developed such advanced technology while maintaining ethical restraints? Most civilizations that achieve such power become corrupted by it. Admiral Chen considered the question carefully before responding. Human history is filled with examples of power corrupting individuals and institutions. But we've also learned that unchecked aggression ultimately destroys the aggressor. Our greatest technological advances came from studying the remains of a probe from an extinct civilization that destroyed itself through endless warfare. She led him to a memorial wall displaying the names of extinct species throughout galactic history. Hundreds of civilizations that had achieved great technological advancement only to annihilate themselves through internal conflict or external aggression. We decided early in our space age that we would rather be protectors than conquerors, Chen continued. Our advanced technology exists to defend the innocent, not to expand our territory or impose our will on others. The concept was still difficult for Vexthar to fully comprehend, but he was beginning to understand its practical advantages. Humanity commanded respect and cooperation throughout the galaxy not through fear of conquest, but through gratitude for protection. Species voluntarily shared resources and information with Earth because they knew humans could be trusted not to abuse that cooperation. During his month-long stay on Earth, Vexthar observed human society with the analytical mind of a career military officer. What he discovered challenged every assumption about the relationship between technological capability and political organization. Humans had developed systems of governance that prevented the concentration of destructive power in individual hands. Their military forces operated under strict ethical guidelines that prioritized the protection of innocent life over strategic objectives. Most remarkably, they had created technologies that could only be used defensively, making it impossible for their own weapons to be turned against peaceful populations. How do you maintain unity among so many different human cultures? Vexthar asked during a meeting with the Global Defense Council. Zephyrian expansion was driven partly by our need to control diverse populations through superior force. Secretary General Santos smiled at the question. We learned that diversity is actually a source of strength rather than division. Different human cultures contribute unique perspectives and solutions to common problems. Unity doesn't require uniformity. It was a lesson that Zephyrian society was slowly learning. As they moved away from conquest-based expansion, they were discovering that cooperation with diverse species provided benefits that domination never could. Trade networks developed naturally when based on mutual advantage rather than forced tribute. Scientific advancement accelerated when researchers from different species shared knowledge freely. But, perhaps the most important lesson Vexthar learned during his stay was about the nature of true strength. He had always believed that power came from the ability to impose one's will on others through superior force. Humanity had shown him that real power came from the ability to protect and inspire others through superior wisdom. When it came time for the Zephyrian delegation to return home, Admiral Chen provided them with a gift that symbolized the new relationship between their species, a small quantum communication device that would allow instant contact with Earth if the Zephyrians ever needed assistance dealing with external threats. We hope you'll never need to use it, Chen said as Vexthar accepted the device. But, if aggressive species threaten Zephyrian space, know that humanity stands ready to help defend peaceful civilizations, regardless of their past actions. The gesture was both generous and profound. Humanity was offering to protect the very species that had once planned to conquer them, demonstrating a capacity for forgiveness that Zephyrian culture found almost incomprehensible. As the new harmony departed Earth's system, Vexthar contemplated the report he would deliver to the Zephyrian High Council. His recommendations would shape how his species adapted to a galaxy where technological supremacy belonged to beings who used that power responsibly. The irony wasn't lost on him. By attempting to conquer humanity, the Zephyrians had inadvertently discovered a civilization that could teach them how to achieve true greatness without resorting to the violence and domination that had defined their culture for millennia. 6 months later, the first joint Zephyrian human research station opened in neutral space, dedicated to developing technologies that could protect peaceful species throughout the galaxy. It was staffed by scientists from both civilizations working toward common goals that neither could achieve alone. The age of conquest was ending, replaced by an era of cooperation that promised benefits beyond anything the old empires had ever achieved through force. Humanity had shown the galaxy that true power lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to build and protect. And, across the stars, other aggressive species began to consider whether they too might benefit from choosing cooperation over conquest, inspired by the example of their former enemies who had learned to work together toward a better future for all galactic civilization. The humans had won more than a military victory. They had won the peace that followed, transforming the very nature of interstellar relations through the simple revolutionary idea that strength should be used to protect rather than to dominate. It was a lesson that would reshape the galaxy for generations to come.